Hello everyone, I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
Today we'll be discussing Book 3, Chapter 20 of Memories of Ice, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our covers of this long chapter, probably 1 of 20. I'm just kidding. It's probably more like 1 of 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think 3 is a good estimate. This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion, and there will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode contains adult topics and thus is not suitable for children.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we would really appreciate that, and you can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at HorseFrogProductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@HorseFrogProductions.com. We received a couple of Spotify comments this week. The first was from Chuck Jackman, clarifying that Olar Ithil is the first Talan Imass soul taken, not the first ever soul taken.
Okay.
The way it sounded when we were reading, it made it sound like she was the first ever soul taken, but I'm assuming that there's some additional information in the Carcanis books because Franklin GM also said that we'll get more information about Olar Ithil in the Carcanis books. So maybe some of this comes out there. I'm not exactly sure.
I'm like you. I've only read the original 10 series of the Malazan Books of the Fallen. I've not checked out the Carcanis trilogy, and I've not read completely through the Esselmont either. So yeah, there's a lot of information that I'm probably obviously missing.
You've read most of the Esselmont books. Well, I say that the Forge of the High Mage stuff, I don't think either of us have gotten into.
Oh yeah, that's his new one, yeah.
Yeah, you probably only have 5 books that you haven't read, maybe.
Oh, okay.
It's not an extreme amount.
And I did read Witness, because I just had to read Witness, but I don't know why. I just had zero interest in the Carcanis trilogy, man. I don't know why. I still am not really intrigued enough to want to go back there, unless it's just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, you must read this.
I've heard it's a difficult transition because the Malazan Book of the Fallen is a narration, I believe, by somebody. I don't know exactly who it is, but there's a certain style to it.
Right.
The Carcanis books have a different author in the Malazan universe, and I've heard that it's a challenging adaptation if you're so invested in these original books. So we'll see when I read them how I feel about it, because it might be difficult for me to transition to that.
I laugh because of that, like, it was already challenging enough to read Erikson to begin with. It's like, dude, is it going to require another degree to read the Carcanis trilogy? Witness was pretty straightforward. That reads just like, but it's similar. It has the same vibe because it's still Malazan universe.
I think it's the prose, the way he writes changes, and there are aspects of the books that I have difficulty with when it becomes more...
Is it a bunch of gothic emo sadness?
I don't know.
The Wuthering Heights of the Malazan universe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll read it whenever the 3rd book comes out. I don't like having loose threads. I was fortunate in that I had all 10 books to plow through when I wanted to read them, so I will commit to reading those after the 3rd book is published, which I believe in the next couple of years it should be done.
I hope so, because I'm dying for the Witness stuff. I made the mistake of reading the first one. It's like, gummit. It's like I should have waited. I just should have waited.
Yeah, and I imagine that's a hard wait because you told me it was pretty good.
It's great, man. I enjoyed it.
All right, well, thanks Chuck Jackman and Franklin GM for reaching out to us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank y'all.
All right, Chapter 20, Part 1. The chapter begins with an excerpt. Quote, "It is a most ancient tale, 2 gods from before the time of men and women, longing and love and loss, the beasts doomed to wander through the centuries. A tale of Moors, told with the purpose of no resolution. Its meaning, gentle readers, lies not in a soul-warming conclusion, but in all that is unattainable in this world. Who then could have imagined such closure?" End quote. And this is from Winter's Love by Silbakatha.
That's a name. That's a name. It's almost like a swear.
The gods this passage refers to are Tog and Fandere, and based on the ending of the last chapter, there is the hint that there is some correlation between Tok and the Maib and Tog and Fandere. Exactly what that connection is remains to be seen.
Yeah, agreed.
The heart of the vast palace lay buried in the cliff. Seas born to the east of the bay battered the cliff's jagged hooves, lifting spray to darken the rock face. That's the first time I'm hearing cliffs described as having hooves.
Hooves. That is interesting. It's all the Feiner.
Oh, yeah.
He spent too much time writing in the world of Feiner, I guess. Writing Feiner in this world. And all those magnificent horses from the last book, from Deadhouse Gates.
Do you think these hooves have a frog?
Well, I would hope so. Some big ones.
Immediately beyond the broken shore's rough spars, the waters of Coral Bay pitched into inky blackness, fathoms deep. The city's harbor was little more than a narrow, crooked cut on the lee side of the cliff, a depthless pressure that opened a split nearly bisecting the city. It was a harbor without docks. The sheer faces of the sides had been carved into long piers, surmounted by causeways. At high tide level, mooring rings had been driven into the living stone. Broad sweeps of thick netting, twice the height of an ocean trader's masts, spanned the entire breadth of water from the harbor's mouth all the way to its apex, where no tethered anchor could touch the fjord's bottom, and where the shores themselves offered no strand, no shallows whatsoever. A ship's anchors were drawn upward. The catmen, as they were called, that strange, almost tribal collection of workers who lived with their wives and children in shacks on the netting and whose sole profession was the winching of anchors and the tethering of sway lines, had made of the task artistry in motion. This locale has been one that stuck with me since the first time I read the books. It's an incredibly creative location with the nets hanging above the water and the anchor points for the ships being above instead of below. A harbor built into the cliffs. It would make for some incredible visuals.
Yes, it would. This has always been a very strong visual point for me. A real funny thing, a term that you and I have forgotten that he uses a lot that I forgot is living stone.
That stuck out to me too.
He starts saying that a lot, if I'm not mistaken. A phrase that starts coming to life, and I guess that's his archaeology roots digging into the living stone. I seem to recall that becomes one that I forgot about until seeing that. I'm like, the living stone.
What does it mean exactly?
You know, most of us would see stone as just some impermanent thing, or, you know, that's just kind of there and hardened, and it's not anything that's just, you break it, you do with it as you will. He sees it as part of, I guess, as part of the earth, and I guess, and technically, in this world, it would be if it's part of burn.
Okay. I always pictured it as like granite or something.
I can see that
Some
too.
type of bedrock type rock.
I have an easy time with that visualization, Kamraun, because this is granite hills over here. I think I've told you it's real funny because we don't have the heat island effect of the cities. That's where y'all have the problem mostly at night, why it doesn't cool down. It's just so many buildings together. Here in the hill country, we've got small populations, except in one town in particular, about 70 miles from here, there's a place called Llano, and that's where most of the hills are granite. And we have some of this. Enchanted Rock is the second largest natural outcrop of granite in America, next to someone over in Georgia, I think. But these hills, I mean, in that town, it stays the same like the city. The nights are just as hot as the day because those hills just soak up that sun and just give it off at night like a building does. It's crazy.
Yeah. The thermal mass, and then it emits heat. From the wide, sea-facing battlement of the palace, the sealskin roofed huts and driftwood sheds of the catmen were like a scattering of brown pebbles and beach detritus, snagged on netting that was thread-like with distance. No figure scampered between the structures. No smoke rose from the angled hood chimneys. Had he an eagle's eye, Talk would have had no trouble seeing the salt-dried bodies tangled here and there in the netting. As it was, he could only take the Seerdomin's word for it that those small, bedraggled smudges were indeed corpses. The trader ships no longer came to Coral. The catmen had starved. Every man, every woman, every child. A legendary and unique people within the city had become extinct. And that's really sad to me. The Panyan Seer strikes again, and it's such a unique subculture here that was obliterated.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by the fact that this is even given to us at all. This is not necessary, but I love that it's given to us. You know, we wouldn't have had to even know, we would have never known about this race of people that have been wiped out by starvation. You know, that's kind of wild. That small little, I love those small little twists he gives. It's not a twist, it's just details that add so much more poignancy to the scene.
Yeah, it's his way that the world building happens, because he starts with the geography again here, and then the people that are living in it due to the necessities. And I really appreciate that. I think we've said it before about how the world building happens. And I agree. It wasn't necessary for him to give it to us, but that's why I enjoy his writing, is because that depth is there.
It's not just given. A lot of, We see this a lot in a lot of other stories, and where information is given just to kind of catch you up on what's going on because we're not ever going to get around to it. His is never that way. I mean, it is and is not. It's information you need to make it, but it's at the same time, it's like it's different levels. Like you said, it's always layered. Those layers are so amazing.
The observation had been delivered in a detached tone, but Talk sensed an undercurrent in the nameless warrior priest's words. The huge man stood close, one hand gripping Talk's left arm above the elbow, to keep him from flinging himself from the cliff, to keep him standing upright. What had begun as one task had quickly become the other. This reprieve from the clutches of the matron was but temporary. Talk's broken body had no strength left within it. Muscles had atrophied. Warped bones and seized joints gave him the flexibility of dried wood. His lungs were filled with fluid, making his drawn breath a wheeze, his exhalation a milky gurgle. The seer had wanted him to see Coral, the palace fortress, often assailed by Ellengarth warships and pirate fleets, never taken. His vast cordon of mages, the 1,000 or more K'chain Shemal Ka'el hunters, the elite legions of his main army. This force sounds significantly stronger than the force that was used to assault Kapustan. 1,000 K'chain Shemal hunters? Who can stand up to that?
I don't know, man. That's if they would have come against Kapistan, man. I'm assuming Kapistan would have looked just very much like here.
Yeah, I don't know if the Talani Mass had enough there with that little force that they had that Pran Cole used.
Yeah.
Do you remember it was like 50 or so that they had to assault Kapustan?
Yeah, it was. How many Talani Mass? Yeah, it wasn't a whole lot.
No, the K'chain Shemal. I want to say it was around 50. K'chain Shemal, right?
Maybe 50. If it was that many. It may have been like 20 to 30. 1,000 of them things? That's nasty. That scares me. Mm-hmm. These guys scare me because I guess part of it, a part of it is because we know nothing about them. These things have blades for hands. And to make matters worse, they're not even alive. We brought them back from the dead. You're like, wait, what? This is not good at all. This can't be good.
Right. Also, a vast cordon of mages also sounds like more than 4 or 5. Brood's forces don't have that many. There may be some power level differences between those that they have, though, given, its ascendance and a collection of forces.
Yeah, but what's weird, do we need to make the same assumption that the seer might have people in the same maybe ascendant level powers at his call as well?
I don't know. We don't know anything about their mages at all.
I know it. I know that him picking up Rake picking up an Astri in his dragon form was like poison to him. That's kind of wild, dude. Because Rake's so powerful, he couldn't get him out of his hand fast enough.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, the vast cordon. I'm like, yeah, that sounds a significantly bigger number, than Brood's forces. We got Brood and Rake's forces combined.
The defeats to the north meant little to the seer. Indeed, he would yield Seta, Lest, and Marek. He would leave the invaders to their long, exhausting march through scorched lands that offered no sustenance, where even the wells had been fouled. As for the enemies to the south, there was now a vast stretch of rough sea to impede their progress, a sea the seer had filled with shattered mountains of ice. There were no boats to be found on the far shore in any case. A journey to the western end of Ortnal Cut would take months. True, the Talani Mass could cross the water as wave-borne dust, but it would have to fight the fierce currents the entire way, currents that plunged into the depths on cold streams, that swept in submerged rivers eastward, out into the ocean. The seer was well satisfied, said the nameless seer Daman, pleased enough to yield Talk this momentary mercy, out from his mother's arms. The chill, salty wind whipped at his face, tugged at his ragged, long, dirty hair. His clothes were little more than crusted strips. The seer Daman had given him his cloak, which Talk had wrapped about himself like a blanket. It had been this gesture that had hinted to Talk that the man at his side still possessed a shred of humanity. The discovery had brought water to his eyes. Clarity had been reborn within him, aided by the seer Daman's detailed account of the battles to the south. Perhaps it was insanity's final, most convincing delusion, but Talk clung to it nonetheless. He stared southward across the wind-whipped seas. The mountainous shoreline on the far side was barely visible. They had surely reached it by now. They might well be standing on the beach, staring bleakly towards him, and all that lay in between. Baaljag would not be discouraged. A goddess hid within her, driving ever onward, to find her mate. Talk thought, the mate who hides within me. We'd traveled, side by side, all unknowing of the secrets within each other. Ah, such brutal irony. And that is tragic. Thinking back to the prologue, the wolf had lost his mate and has been searching for her for hundreds of thousands of years. To be that close and unable to connect is horrible.
Dude, that just sucks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That just sucks.
It's like one of those Shakespearean tragedies.
Yes, very much so.
I'm still really curious where the Mybe fits into this.
I know it. Other than being Silver Fox, even the Silver Fox thing, I understand theoretically what she has kind of been made for, I guess, to kind of make to give the Talana mass rest. But even then, I still don't see where she herself fits in. And I guess that's where she is herself. She doesn't see where she fits in either, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever get that answer.
I know. It's like that coming.
And perhaps Tool would not be daunted. Time and distance meant nothing to the Talani mass. The same, no doubt, was true for the three Segula. They still had their singular message to deliver, after all. Their people's invitation to war. But Lady Envy, mistress of adventure, seduced by serendipity. True, she was angry now. That much was clear from the Seer Damon's reportage. Affronted was a better description, Tok corrected. Sufficient to see her temper flare. But that temper was not a driven thing. She was not one to smolder, not one to kindle deep-bedded fires of vengeance. She existed for distraction, for wayward whims. Lady Envy, and likely her wounded, hurting dog, Gareth, would turn away now, at last. Tired of the hunt, they would not set to themselves the task of pursuit, not across this violent sea with its glowing, awash leviathans of jagged ice. He told himself not to be disappointed, but a pang of sadness twisted within him at the thought. He missed her, not as a woman, not precisely in any case. He thought, no, the immortal face she presents, I think. Unburdened, a trickster's glint to her millennial regard. I teased her, once danced around that nature, made her stamp her foot and frown, as only an immortal could do when the unlikely brunt of such mocking. I turned the knife. Gods, did I truly possess such audacity? Well, dear lady, I humbly apologize now. I am not the brave man I once was, if it was indeed bravery and not simple stupidity. Mocking's been taken away from my nature, never to return, and perhaps that's a good thing. Ah, I can see you nod most wholeheartedly at that. Mortals should not mock, for all the obvious reasons. Detachment belongs to gods, because only they can afford its price. So be it. Thank you, Lady Envy. No recriminations will pursue you. It was well run. The Seer Daman said, You should have seen Coral in its day, Malazan. Tok asked, It was your home, wasn't it? The Seer Daman said, Aye, though my home now is in the heart of my seer. Tok muttered, Where the winds are even colder. The Seer Daman was silent for a moment. Tok was expecting a blow from a gauntleted fist, or a painful wrench from the hand gripping his frail arm. Either one would have been an appropriate response. Either one would have elicited an approving nod from the seer. Instead, the man said, This is a summer day, but not like the summer days I remember in my youth. Coral's wind was warm, soft, caressing as a lover's breath. My father, he fished out beyond the cut, up along the coast north of here. Vast, rich shoals. He'd be gone for a week or more with every season's run. We'd all go down to the causeway to watch the fleets return, to see our father's orange sail among the barks. Tok glanced up at the man, saw the smile, the glimmering echo of a child's joy in his eyes, saw them die once more. The Seer Daman went on. He came back the last time, to find that his family had embraced the faith. His wife to the Tenescauri, his sons to the ranks. Eldest begun schooling as Seer Daman. He did not throw his lines to me on that day, seeing my uniform. Seeing my mother, hearing her mindless shrieks. Seeing my brothers with spears in hand. My sisters naked and clinging to men thrice their age. No, he swung the boom, tacked on to the offshore breeze. I watched his sail until I could see it no more. It was my way, Malazan. Tok whispered, of saying goodbye. The Seer Daman said, of saying good luck. Of saying, well done. Tok thought, destroyer of lives. Seer, how could you have done this to your people? It's easy to hate an enemy that you don't know. When you humanize them, you see that they are just the other side of the same coin. These poor people are truly victims in this scenario. This Seer Daman's tale is tragic. I have mentioned in the past how I think about a family that had to live through this. Imagine being that father and returning to find his family stolen from him by this cult. That flight from the birth must have been heartrending.
Oh, man, absolutely horrible. And crazy, something I kind of just caught as we were getting through here. Seer Daman was saying that his dad would be gone for a week, maybe two, fishing. So in that little bit of time, he comes back and his mama is already screaming with the mindless shrieks. So whatever they do to them is outright just got to be sorceress from the get-go. I never really caught that. So they join their ranks of weirdness, I guess. I don't know. That's sad.
Yeah, I'm curious at what condition everything was in before he left for that season and came back a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
Because that is a very fast sequence of events for them to drop like dominoes like that, the whole family.
I could see if you left and you knew there was mutterings of war pretty close, but if that was happening, it'd be like, maybe I should better hang out here in case it spills over this way, if it was that close. But I wouldn't have thought they'd have gone fishing if it was that close. But I don't know. It is sad, man. Very sad.
Yeah. A distant bell rang in the palace behind them. The Seerdomin's grip tightened. He said, "The allotted time is done." Tok said, "Back to my own embrace," his gaze straining to catch, one last time, the world before him. He thought, "Remember this, for you will not see it again, Tok the Younger." Tok said, "Thank you for the use of your cloak." The Seerdomin said, "You are welcome, Malazan. These winds were once warm. Come, lean on me while we walk. Your weight is as nothing." They slowly made their way towards the building. Tok said, "Easily born, you mean?" The Seerdomin said, "I did not say that, Malazan. I did not say that." I feel like this guy is one of those that has been caught up in the whole Panion situation. You can tell there is regret and sadness under all this communication.
Oh, yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. It's a very touching scene.
The gutted tenement seemed to shiver a moment before collapsing in a cloud of dust. The cobbles of the street trembled beneath Akovian's boots, and thunder shook the air. Hedge turned to him, grinning through the smears of soot. He said, "See? Easy." Akovian answered Hedge with a nod, watched as the man rejoined his fellow sappers, and they set off for the next unrecoverable building. Beside Akovian, Captain Norul brushed the dust from her uniform and said, "At the very least, there will be no shortage of material." The morning was hot, the sun bright. Life was returning to Kapustan. People with scarves covering their faces crawled through the rubble of their homes. Bodies were being retrieved as wreckage was cleared away, wrapped and thrown onto fly-swarmed wagons. The air of the streets stank with decay, but it seemed that the horses they rode had long since grown used to it. This really sounds like the aftermath of a terrible earthquake.
Yeah, it kind of does. In a weird way, when you see war stuff, war footage, it does look that way. It does about the same kind of damage to the real estate.
Yeah, buildings knocked down, people trapped, that kind of stuff. Norul said, "We should proceed, sir." They resumed their journey. Beyond the west gate were gathering the official representatives, the contingent that would set out to meet the approaching armies of Dujek One-Arm and Caladan Brood. The parley was set to take place in 3 bells' time. Akovian had left the company's new destriant in command. That would be Velbara, in case you forgot. She has a name.
To be fair, now that she has a role in that group, if we flash back to the beginning of this book, I don't think the fellows were calling each other by their name at first. They were just calling themselves by Shield Anvil, Destriant, and Mortal Sword. I don't recall them giving names out very frequently.
Yeah. I feel like Velbara needs her own t-shirt at this point.
She does.
Some badass looking
she does.
chicken armor.
It's got to be very similar. She's pretty bloody too, so I like the bride in Kill Bill, but in armor as well. It's like she's got a name, dadgummit, because the bride had to work hard for her name too. Yeah. In those Kill Bill movies, so it's like this is like, dude, I'm like you. She's got a name, man. It's Velbara, dadgummit.
The Teniskauri refugees were arriving from the plains by the hundreds. Those few who'd attempted to enter Kapustan had been set upon by the survivors. Reports of peasants being torn apart by frenzied mobs had reached Akovian. And this is exactly what I expected from the Kappan survivors.
Yeah, as did I. Can't say I blame them for feeling this way. There's been a rough go of it here, and their city's gone for the most part. But, hey, yeah, I'm like you. That's kind of what I was thinking is going to happen, too, if they got over this way.
In response, Akovian had sent the Grey Swords out to establish an internment camp outside the west wall. Food was scarce. Akovian wondered how his new destriant was managing. At the very least, shelters were being prepared for the hapless refugees. He thought, who will soon become recruits. Those who survive the next few weeks in any case. It's likely the Grey Sword's coffers will be emptied purchasing food and supplies from the Barghast. Feigner grant, no, Tog grant that the investment will prove worthwhile. The Grey Swords are about to be made of the toughest survivors on the planet. Those Kappan recruits that survived the siege, and the survivors of this latest food shortage, following their escape from the Teniscauri.
There's going to be really tough new gray swords. And for some reason, I'm reminded of one of the Monty Python's Flying Circus skits about the new Royal Navy. Less cannibalism is promised in the new Royal Navy. It's just like, it's also more groovy. It's cool, it's groovy. Less incidents of cannibalism. It's like, it's just like, just kind of thrown in there under the radar. You're like, wait, what? So
makes you wonder if they're short on food, if they're just going to revert back to their old habits.
Well, you've always got some food on them. It's a good incentive for the guy in front of you, I guess, to keep marching. You better not fall down, buddy. Jim's looking kind of hungry back there. I better keep marching.
Yeah. Akovian was not looking forward to the parley. Indeed, the truth was, he had no real business attending it. Norul was now the commander of the Grey Swords. His role as her advisor was dubious. She was capable of representing the company's interests without any help from him. They approached the west gate, which now resembled nothing more than a massive hole in the city's wall. Leaning against one of the burnt-out, mostly fallen gate towers, Gruntle watched them with a half-grin on his barbed face. Stani Menakis paced nearby, apparently in a temper. Gruntle said, "Now there's only Humbrol Tar to wait for." Akovian frowned as he reined in. He asked, "Where's the Mass Council's retinue?" Stani spat, "They've gone ahead. Seems they want a private chat first." Gruntle rumbled, "Relax, lass. Your friend Caruli's with them, right?" Stani exclaimed, "That's not the point! They hid, while you and the Grey Swords here kept them in their damn city alive." Akovian said, "Nonetheless, with Prince Jelarkan dead and no heir apparent, they are Kapustan's ruling body." Stani shouted, "And they could damn well have waited!" Nurul twisted in her saddle to look back up the avenue. She said, "Humbrol Tar is coming. Perhaps if we rode fast enough, we could catch them." Akovian asked, "Is it important?" Nurul said, "Sir, it is." Akovian nodded and said, "I concur." Gruntle pushed himself from the wall and said, "Let's ready our horses, Stani." They set out across the plain, Humbrol Tar, Hitan, and Kafal equally awkward on their borrowed mounts. The Bargas had been none too pleased by the Mass Council's attempted usurpation. Old enmities and mistrust had flared to life once more. That was short-lived gratitude from the Council. I guess it makes me wonder, was there any gratitude at all?
Yeah, I'm assuming not. These guys, these professional political class fellas, yeah, their allegiance lies, is as long as they're alive, or just for it's to get me to tomorrow. It's like, okay, today's a brand new day. Everything is forgotten.
Yeah, because they were saying, you have to come help us. And they did come help them. They were the ones that drove the paintings out of the city. Yeah. That's crazy.
These guys, they drive me nuts.
By all reports, the approaching armies were still a league, perhaps two, distant. Caruli, Rathhood, Rathburn, and Rath Shadowthrone were in a carriage, drawn by the 3 horses of the Gidrath that had not been butchered and eaten during the siege. Akovian recalled the last time he had ridden this road, recalled faces of soldiers now dead, Ferricalian, Torun, Sidless. Behind the formality imposed by the Reeve, these had been his friends. He thought, a truth I dared not approach, not as shield anvil, not as commander. But that has changed. They are my own grief, as difficult to bear as those tens of thousands of others. He pushed the thought away. Control was still necessary. He could afford no emotions. All this repression makes me wonder if he's going to have a point where it all breaks loose.
I had not really thought about that, and he could very well just snap.
You can only bury stuff for so long before it builds up too much.
Oh, yeah. He is really burying it down. And the fact that they kind of keep focusing on that, something has to come of it.
They came within sight of the priest's carriage. Stani snarled in triumph and exclaimed, "Won't they be delighted?" Gruntle said, "Ease on the gloating, lass. We reach them now in all innocence." Stani said, "Do you think me an idiot? Do you think me incapable of subtlety? I'll have you know." Gruntle growled, "All right, woman, forget I spoke." Stani said, "I always do, Gruntle." Would that it were this easy in real life. Once you say something, it's out in the open, and you have to live with the consequences. You can't just say, "Forget I said anything." No.
Right?
It doesn't work that way.
No, it unfortunately does not. So we can't rewind that. Sorry.
The Gidrath driver drew the carriage to a halt as they rode up. A window shutter slid to one side, and Rath Shadowthrone's masked face appeared, the expression neutral. He said, "How fortunate! The rest of our honorable entourage." Akovian sighed under his breath. He thought, there was nothing subtle in that tone, alas. Stani's brows lifted. She said, "Honorable? I'm surprised you recognize the concept, priest." The mask swiveled to her and said, "Ah, Master Caruli's wench, shouldn't you be on your knees?" Stani said, "I'll give you a knee, runt, right between the..." Shadow Throne's minions are so crazy. It's insane that someone of this rank is talking like this.
I guess this is just what happens when you let any old pantheon in your council, dude. These guys, the funny part with Shadow Throne's bunch, these guys I expect to behave like this, coming out of the siege like this, they're the only ones I can say, you know what, you're excused because you guys are just crazy. I expect that, but the other people are acting just like Shadow Throne's folks. So it kind of makes you wonder sometimes, does Shadow Throne kind of infect people with some of his crazy ideas here and there? I'm assuming it's because crazy ideas do get a hold sometimes.
Normalizing that crazy behavior.
Yeah.
Gruntle loudly interrupted. He said, "Well now, we're all here. I see outriders ahead. Shall we proceed?" Wrath Shadow Throne snapped. "We're early!" Gruntle said, "Aye, and that's unfortunately unprofessional of us. Never mind, we can continue at the slowest pace possible, to give them time to prepare." Wrath Shadowthrone said, "A wise course in the circumstances." The mask's hinged lips twisted into a broad smile. Then the head withdrew and the shutter slid back in place. In a bright tone, Stani said, "I'm going to cut that man into very small pieces." Gruntle said, "We all appreciate your sense of subtlety, lass." Stani said, "And well you should, oaf." Akovian stared at the woman, then at the caravan captain, wondering. I don't blame him. Given how serious things were in the Grey Swords and how Trake is the new god of war, how could he not wonder at the behavior of Gruntle and Stani here?
There's that too, but Akovian, through this whole book, it seems to be one of those folks that just don't quite understand how folks get along together. You know, it's like, I'm one of y'all, but I don't really get y'all.
He does set himself apart a bit, doesn't he?
He really does. And I don't know if that's just through, I don't think it's an act or anything. It just seems that a part of me is just like, and because he seems to be a very genuine individual and, you know, very thoughtful individual. But there's times like he just kind of just don't seem to get it. When things, well, the little jabs that happen between folks, like with Hetton and always on to him, you know, it took him a while to really understand what's going on there. Almost had to have it pointed out to him.
It's like a combination of being too serious and naive.
Yes, he's seriously naive.
And I guess a little bit of social awkwardness, too.
Yeah, and I guess that would have been bred into these guys, too, because they've been, I'm not even sure, they never really say, but I'm assuming to get this kind of loyalty, maybe they were youth when maybe the Grey Swords rescued them, and they create this kind of loyalty amongst their followers. And the religion aspect of it too keeps them very regimented and disciplined, and that may be part of it as well, and part of the naivete.
Mm-hmm. Picker sat on the dusty steps of what had once been a temple. Her back and shoulders ached from throwing chunks of masonry since dawn. Blen must have been hovering nearby, for she appeared with a water skin and said, "You look thirsty." Picker accepted it, then said, "Funny how you do your vanishing act whenever there's hard work to be done." Blen said, "Well, I brought you water, didn't I?" Picker scowled. Across the street, Captain Perrin and Quick Ben were saddling horses, preparing to head out to the reunion with One Arm's host and Brood's army. They'd been uncommonly cozy since meeting up once more, making Picker suspicious. Quick Ben's schemes were never pleasant. Picker muttered, "I'd rather we were all going." Blen said, "To the parley? Why?" "This way everyone else does the walking." Picker said, "Easier to be lurking about, is it? Weighed down with a half-full water skin. You'd be saying different if you'd been tossing rocks with the rest of us, Blend." Blen shrugged and said, "I've been busy enough." Picker asked, "Doing what?" Blen said, "Gathering information." Picker said, "Oh yeah, who's whispering you been listening in on then?" Blen said, "People. Us and them, here and there." Picker asked, "Them? Who's them?" Blen said, let's see. Barghast, Grey Swords, a couple of those loose-lipped Gidrath from the Thrall, 3 acolytes from the temple behind you." Picker flinched, swiftly rose to cast a nervous eye on the fire-scorched building behind her. She said, "Which god, Blend? No lies." Man, she's so superstitious, it cracks me up.
Oh, I know it. I love these guys, man.
Blend said, "Why would I lie, Corporal? Shadow Throne." Picker grunted and said, "Spying on the sneaks, was you? And what were they talking about?" Blend said, "Some bizarre plan of their masters. Vengeance against a couple of necromancers holed up in an estate just up the street." Picker asked, "The one with all the bodies out front and the smelly guards on the walls?" Blend said, "Presumably the same and none other." This was because Boshlane and Corball Broach turned the Acolyte of Shadow away? That's crazy that they're plotting revenge against them.
These guys, man, they are just, and where do they have the time for this? It's like, y'all are supposed to be able to build this city, man.
Picker said, all right, so let's hear the report on the rest of them. Blen said, the Barghast are crowing. Agents of the Masked Council are buying food to feed the citizens. The Grey Swords are buying food too, to feed a fast-growing camp of Tenniscowry refugees outside the city. The White Faces are getting rich. Picker said, hold on, Blend. Did you say Tenniscowry refugees? What are the Grey Swords up to? Hood knows there's enough corpses lying around for those cannibals. Why give them real food? Why feed the evil bastards at all? Blend said, sound questions. Certainly, I admit my own curiosity was piqued. Picker said, no doubt you've come up with a theory, too. Blend said, I have assembled the puzzle, to be more precise. Disparate facts, observances, offhand comments believed to be uttered in private, overheard by none other than the faithful servant standing before you. Picker said, Opon's quivering knees, woman, get on with it. Blend said, you never did appreciate a good gloat. All right, the Grey Swords were sworn to Fener. They weren't just a mercenary company, more like damned crusaders to the holy cause of war. And they took it seriously. Only something's happened. They've lost their god. Picker said, no doubt there's a tale there. Blend said, indeed, but it's not relevant. Picker said, meaning you don't know. Blend said, precisely. The point is the company's surviving officers rode off to the Barghast camps, found a gaggle of tribal witches waiting for them, and together they all arranged a reconsecration. Picker said, you mean they switched gods? Oh no, don't tell me Treach. Blend said, no, not Treach. Treach already has his crusaders. Picker said, oh right, must be Jess then, mistress of weaving. They're all taking up knitting, but fiercely. Dude, the first time I read that, I didn't get it. Is she saying that all of the Treach acolytes are knitting fiercely?
Yeah, they've all taken up knitting fiercely, yes.
Man, is that because they're mostly female?
I have no idea. So they're saying, no, not Treach, because Treach has got his fellows, and we got that Gruntle in his lot. So Picker just is making the joke, it must be Jess, mistress of weaving. They're all taking up knitting, but fiercely. I think she's just kind of just making a jest. I don't know if there's even a jest. She may be making up like somebody like the mistress of the boat warren.
So the Grey Swords are taking up knitting, fierce knitting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what they mean.
Blend said, not quite. Tog and Fandere, the she-wolf of winter. Tog's long-lost mate. Recall the story? You must have heard it when you were a child, assuming you were ever a child. Picker said, careful, Blend. Blend said, sorry. Anyway, the Grey Swords were virtually wiped out. They're looking for recruits. Picker's brows rose. She said, the Tenniscowry? Hood's breath. Blend said, makes sense, actually. Picker said, sure. If I needed an army, I'd look first to people who eat each other when things get tough. Absolutely. In an instant. Blend said, well, that's an unfortunate angle to take. It's more a question of finding people with no lives. Picker said, losers, you mean? Blend said, yes. No ties, no loyalties. Ripe for arcane rituals of induction. Picker grunted again, then said, mad. Everyone's gone mad. Blend murmured, speaking of which. Perrin and Quick Ben rode up. Perrin said, Corporal Picker. Picker said, aye, Captain? Perrin asked, do you know where Spindle is right now? Picker said, no idea, sir. Perrin said, I'd suggest you keep better track of your squad then. Picker said, well, he went off with Sergeant Anstey. Someone's come up from the tunnels, claiming to be Prince Erard, some dispossessed ruler from one of the cities south of the river. The man was demanding to speak with a representative of One Arm's host, and since we couldn't find you at the time, Perrin cursed under his breath and said, let me get this straight. Sergeant Anstey and Spindle elected themselves to be One Arm's host's official representatives to take audience with a prince? Anstey? Spindle? Beside Perrin, Quick Ben choked back a laugh, earning a glare from Perrin.
That is great, dude.
Using an innocent tone, Picker said, Deterin volunteered too. So it was the three of them, I think. Maybe a few others. Perrin asked, Mallet? Picker shook her head and said, he's with Hedge, sir, tending to healing and whatever. Quick Ben cut in, Captain, we'd best start our journey. Anstey will stall as soon as he gets confused, and he usually gets confused immediately after the making of introductions. Deterin won't say a thing, and likely none of the others will either. Spindle might babble, but he's wearing a hair shirt. It should be all right. Perrin asked, really? And shall I hold you to that, wizard? Quick Ben's eyes widened. Perrin gathered his reins and growled, never mind, let's quit this city, before we find ourselves in a whole new war. Corporal Picker. Picker said, sir? Perrin asked, why are you just standing here on your own? Picker quickly glanced around and whispered, the bitch. Perrin said, Corporal? Picker said, nothing. Sorry, sir. I was just resting. Perrin said, when you're done resting, Corporal, go retrieve Anstey, Spindle, and the others. Send Erard to the thrall, with word that the real representatives of One Arm's host will see him shortly, should he wish an audience. Picker said, understood, Captain. Perrin said, I hope so. She watched the two men ride off down the street, then spun around and asked, where are you, you coward? Blend asked, sir? emerging from the shadows of the temple's entrance. Pigger said, "You heard me." Blen said, "I'd noted something inside this hovel. Went to investigate." Pigger said, "Hovel? Shadowthrone's sacred abode, you mean?" She was pleased to see Blen suddenly pale. Blen said, "Oh, I'd, forgotten." Pigger said, "You panicked." Hee! Blen panicked, smelled a scene about to happen, and fled into the nearest building like a rabbit down a bolt hole. "Just wait until I tell the others." Blen sniffed and said, "An unseemly version, malignly twisting a purely coincidental occurrence. They'll not believe you." Pigger said, "That's what you..." Blen said, "Uh-oh," and vanished once again. Startled, Pigger looked round. Two black-cloaked figures were coming down the street, making directly for her. The taller, pointy-bearded one called out, "Dear soldier." Pigger's hackles rose at the imperious tone. She said, "What?" A thin brow arched. He said, "Respect is accorded ourselves, woman. We demand no less. Now listen, we are in need of supplies to effect the resumption of our journey. We require food, clean water, and plenty of it. And if you could direct us to a clother..." Pigger said, "At once, here." She stepped up to him and drove her gauntleted fist full into his face. The man's feet flew out from under him, and he struck the cobbles with a meaty smack. Out cold. Blen stepped up behind the other man and cracked him in the head with the pommel of her short sword. With a high-pitched grunt, he crumpled. Closing fast behind them was an old man in ragged servant garb. He skidded to a halt 5 paces away and raised his hands. He shrieked, "Don't hit me!" Pigger frowned and asked, "Now why would we do that? Are these two yours?" The manservant's expression was despondent. He said, "Aye," and sighed, lowering his hands. Pigger said, "Advise them of proper forms of address when they awaken." The man said, "Absolutely, sir." Eyes on the two unconscious men, Blen said, "We should get moving, Corporal." The manservant begged, "Yes, yes, please." Pigger shrugged and said, "I see no point in dawdling. Lead on, soldier." Man, I had mentioned before, the last time we saw Boshlane and Corval Broach, that they were having a bad time. This is, again, it just continues.
Oh, man. I love it, dude. What's so funny, for some reason, I was thinking that was, that when we saw them last time, that was like the last time we're going to see them. I like that when we see them again, you get smashed in the face. I'm just surprised Mancy's not balling them out for not killing them when they're down.
Uh-huh. It's kind of impressive. It shows you how strong Picker is.
Yeah. She's very tough.
They must be pretty formidable because Boshlane and Corval Broach are no slouches.
No. I don't know why. For some reason, I presume these guys to be fairly formidable physically, not just on their magic side, but just kind of commanding presences. So I for some reason, I always think of Picker and Blen as kind of small for some reason.
I always pictured Picker as, she's not a small woman. I always pictured her as like, not fat, but larger. She's a soldier, so she's obviously...
Are you saying thick,
probably
sir?
with 2 C's.
I'm sorry. I forgot that's the new thick. I apologize.
Like more of like a softball pitcher.
Right, yeah.
Perrin and Quickben rode within 1,000 paces of the Tenniscourie encampment, which lay north of the road on their right. Neither man spoke until they were well past. Then Perrin sighed and said, "That looks to be trouble fast approaching." Quickben said, "Oh, why?" Perrin shot his companion a startled glance, then returned his gaze to the road. He said, "The lust for vengeance against those peasants. The Capins might well swarm out through the gate and slaughter them, with the masked council's blessing." He thought, "And why, wizard, do I think I see something out of the corner of my eye, there on your shoulder? Then, when I look more closely, it's gone." I think it's interesting that Perrin can see Talamandus, at least partially.
You know, my thing with Perrin in a weird way, because he's like the master of the deck, in some ways I think of Neo in the Matrix. You know, he sees the world in a lot different way now. You know, can he see the interweavings of magic and weird stuff? And it's like,
I was thinking that he's got the 6 demon bags. He can see things other people can't see, do things other people can't do.
Terrific shit. Yeah. A 6 demon bag. It's like, oh my word. I cannot get KP to watch that with me for some reason. She won't watch my weird romantic comedies, but I'll watch hers with her. I'm like, dude, just come on, man. Watch. It's Big Trouble in Little China. If you like John Carpenter, yes. Do you like Kurt Russell? Yes. Well, then why would you watch this? I don't know. It's like, come on, man. It's great.
Yeah, that's like a golden era Kurt Russell movie.
Dude, Russell is so magnificent, and there's so many great one-liners. There's so many great one-liners in that movie. Well, I read that they had him channeling his inner John Wayne for that one. So he's really trying to pull the John Wayne stuff through the whole movie, but he always gets knocked. He's the first one knocked out every time.
Yes. He's vastly outmatched the whole movie.
The whole movie, dude. That's what's so great about it. It's like, that would be me, because he's me. And he is me in an action movie. It's like, I want to be there for you, and I'm going to stand up for what's right, but I'm going to be the first one down. When the magic starts flying, I'm the first guy dead.
He's like the tough guy that thinks he's tough, that doesn't realize that he's way in over his head. Quick Ben said, "That'd be a mistake for the masked council. The Grey Swords looked ready to defend their guests, if those pickets and trenches were any indication." Perrin said, "Aye, they're anticipating becoming very unpopular with what they're now up to." Quick Ben said, "Recruiting. Then again, why not? That mercenary company paid a high price defending the city and its citizens." Perrin said, "The memory of their heroic efforts could vanish in an eye's wink, wizard. There's only a few hundred Grey Swords left besides. Should a few thousand Capins charge them..." Quick Ben said, "I wouldn't worry, Captain. Even the Capins, no matter how enraged, would hesitate before crossing those soldiers. They're the ones who survived, after all. As I said, the masked council will be foolish to hold the grudge. We'll discover more at the parley, no doubt." Perrin said, "Assuming we're invited." Quick Ben, we'd do better with a private conversation with Whiskey Jack. I personally have very little to say to most of the others who will be present. I have a report to deliver in any case. Quick Ben said, "Oh, I wasn't planning on speaking at the parley, Captain, just listening." They had left the occupied areas behind and now rode down an empty road. The rolling plains stretching out on their right, the bluffs marking the river 300 paces distant on their left. Quick Ben said, "I see riders north." Perrin squinted, then nodded. He said, "It's happened." Quick Ben asked, "What has?" Perrin said, "The second gathering." The wizard shot him a glance. He asked, "The Talani Mass? How do you know?" Perrin thought, "Because she's stopped reaching out to me. Tattersail, Nightchill, Bellerdan. Something's happened. Something unexpected, and it's left them reeling." He said, "I just know, wizard. Silver Fox is the lead rider." Quick Ben said, "Your vision must be as a hawk's." Perrin said nothing. He thought, "I don't need eyes. She's coming." Quick Ben asked, "Captain, does Tattersail's soul still dominate within Silver Fox?" Perrin said, "I don't know. All I will say, however, is that whatever faith we held to that we could predict Silver Fox's actions should now be dispensed with." Quick Ben asked, "What has she become then?" Perrin said, "A bonecaster in truth." They reined in to wait for the 4 riders. Krupp's mule seemed to be competing for the lead position, the short-legged beast slipping between a frenzied trot and a canter, the round Daru wobbling and bouncing atop the saddle. The 2 Malazan Marines rode behind Silver Fox and Krupp, looking relaxed. Quick Ben murmured, "Would that I had seen what her companions had seen." Perrin thought, "Yet nothing went as planned. I can see that in her posture, the bridled anger, the diffidence, and, buried deep, pain. She's surprised them. Surprised and defied, and the Talani Mass have answered in an equally unexpected way. Even Krupp looks off-balanced, and not just by that pitching mule." Silver Fox was staring at him as she drew rein, an expression that Perrin could not define. He thought, "As I had sensed, she's thrown up a wall between us. Gods, but she looks like Tattersail. A woman now, no longer the child, and the illusion of years spanning our parting is complete. She's become guarded, a possessor of secrets, that as a child she would not have hesitated to reveal. Hood's breath, every time we meet it seems I must readjust everything." Quick Ben said, "Well met, Silver Fox." "What?" Silver Fox interrupted. "No." Quick Ben said, "Excuse me?" Silver Fox said, "No, wizard. I have no explanations that I am prepared to voice, no questions that I will answer. Krupp has already tried, too many times. My temper is short. Do not test it." Perrin thought, "Guarded and harder. Much, much harder." After a moment, Quick Ben shrugged and said, "Be that way, then." Silver Fox snapped, "I am that way. The anger you would face is Nightchill's, and the rest of us will do nothing to restrain it. I trust I am understood." Quick Ben simply grinned. Cold, challenging. Krupp cried, "Kind sirs, by chance would you be riding to our fair armies? If so, we would accompany you, delighted and relieved to return to said martial bosom. Delighted indeed with the formidable company of yourselves. Relieved, as Krupp has said, by the welcoming destination so closely pending. Impatient, it must be admitted, for the resumption of the journey. Incorrigibly optimistic." Silver Fox growled, "That will do, Krupp." Krupp said, "Of course." Perrin thought, if anything truly existed between us, it is now over. She has left Tattersail behind. She is indeed a bonecaster now. The realization triggered a weaker pang of loss than he had expected. He thought, perhaps we both have moved on. The pressure of what we have grown into, our hearts cannot overcome. So be it. No self-pity, not this time. We've tasks before us. Perrin gathered his reins and said, as Krupp has said, let us resume. We're already late as it is. I was impressed that Perrin was really restrained here and didn't say anything, really, to Silver Fox.
Yeah, I am too. And I think he now, maybe with his new vision, he can see it's like, you know what, this is not, she's gone or she's whatever she is. And it's like, you know what, there's nothing for either of us here. Move along. It's time for us to move along. Mm-hmm. It's like he grew up. This is his growing up.
Yeah. A large sheet of burlap had been raised over the hilltop to shield the parley from the hot afternoon sun. Malazan soldiers ringed the hill in a protective cordon, crossbows cradled in their arms. Eyes on the figures beneath the tarp, Akobian halted his horse and dismounted a dozen paces from the guards. The masked council's carriage had also stopped, the side door swinging open to the 4 representatives of Kapustan. Hitan had clambered down from her horse with a relieved grunt and now came alongside Akobian. She thumped his back and said, I've missed you, wolf. Akobian said, the wolves may be all around me, sir, but I make no such claim for myself. Hitan nodded and said, the tales run through the clans. Old women never shut up. Akobian asked, and young women? Still studying the figures on the hilltop. Hitan said, now you dance on danger, dear man. Akobian said, forgive me if I offended. Hitan said, I would forgive you a smile no matter its reason. Aye, not likely. If you've humor, you hide it far too well. This is too bad. Akobian regarded her. He asked, too bad? Do you not mean tragic? Her eyes narrowed. Then she hissed in frustration and set off up the slope. Akobian watched her for a moment, then shifted his attention to the priests who were now gathering beside the carriage. Wrath Shadowthrone was complaining. They would have us all winded! A gentler slope and we could have stayed in the carriage. Wrathhood sniffed and said, sufficient horses and we might have done the same. This is calculated to insult. Karuli murmured, it is nothing of the sort, comrades. Even now, swarms of biting insects begin their assault upon our fair selves. I suggest you cease complaining and accompany me to the summit and its saving wind. With that, the small, round-faced man set off. One of the priests said, we should insist. Ow! The 3 scrambled after Karuli, deer flies buzzing their heads. Humbreltar laughed and said, they need have only smeared themselves in veteran grease. Gruntle said, they're slippery enough as it is, War Chief. Besides, it's a far more fitting introduction for our visitors. 3 masked priests stumbling and puffing and waving at phantoms circling their heads. At least Karuli's showing some dignity, and he's probably the only one among them with a brain worthy of the name. Stani cried, thank the gods! Gruntle turned to her and asked, what? Why? Stani said, well, you've just used up your entire store of words, oaf, meaning you'll be silent for the rest of the day. Gruntle's grin was far more feral than he intended. Akobian watched the 2 Daru set off, followed by Humbreltar, Hitan, and Kafal. Norul said, sir? Akobian said, do not wait for me. You now speak for the Grey Swords, sir. She sighed, then strode forward. All right, we are going to stop, and we will pick up the chapter where we left off next week. For standout moments, the description of Coral's harbor and the uniqueness of the locale, I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I did too. I'm like you. It's one that's really always stood out to me. And I think it's also stood out to us because we don't spend a lot of time here, but he's able to paint such a good picture so quickly. I just really like that.
Yeah. Receiving confirmation that the wolf gods hide within Talk and Baaljag.
That just really sucks, man. These wolf gods have been traveling on the road together at the beginning of the book. And you're like, wait a minute, what?
The Seerdamon's tragic story about his father returning from a fishing expedition to find his whole family stolen from him by the Panyan Seer.
Dude, that is so nasty. I mean, it's so sad and tragic to have, I agree. It's you come home after all this stuff and you're like, wait a minute, where's my family? There's my wife. Well, she's screaming like a mad woman over there. And now my boys are in uniform. What?
Yeah.
And it's awful, dude. Awful.
That one hit me pretty hard. I got a little bit emotional reading that story. It was rough.
Yeah, it is.
The Seerdaman is showing a small kindness to Talk. That kind of added to that emotional nature of his little story there.
It does, especially because I think you and I both like Talk and seeing, and we hate seeing him get treated so poorly. And even just talking about the condition he's in when they first introduce us to him now. He's not been out of that embrace for months or however long it's been. And he's like, he can't even walk hardly. He's got fluid in his lungs. And yet it's just awful. It just eats me alive to see that too.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that kindness from him in particular because of Talk.
Mm-hmm. Picker and Blend's interaction with each other and Blend's unusual ability to simply disappear when anyone shows up to get people in trouble or to assign them a job.
Are Picker and Blend the greatest comic team in the Bridge Burners? If not, they're at least the second. I'm not sure who's the funniest.
Fiddler's pretty good, too.
Yes, but it's like, for some reason, when we got Picker and Blend, when they show them, sometimes Quick, or not Quick, but Fiddler in that group, it may be really some serious stuff they're into. Picker and Blend, every time I've seen them so far, it's always kind of funny because she does that. She leaves you holding the bag. You're like, dude. I love it, man. I just absolutely love it.
And Picker sucker punching Bosch Lane because she didn't like his tone, knocking him out cold. That was beautiful.
It's not even just the tone. It's the like, I need water, horses. Just like, you're going to do everything for me. I need you to do it for me. Chop, chop, right now. Smack. It's like, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but you're not talking to me. It's like...
Akovian's continued ability to stonewall Hitan is beautiful. The dryness, it just infuriates her.
Oh, it is. That was absolutely masterful. I forgot to mention one thing just a second ago that I thought was also pretty fun in this chapter that's kind of a real quick one and done, is Quick Ben looking at Silver Fox there like he's ready to take her on. He's measuring her up. I was like, I feel like that fellow was like eyeballing her like, I'm going to eat. That's the next soul that goes right into my tummy. It's like, I can't wait. It's that look in his eyes is really hungry to me. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. She's talking smack, basically. She snapped at him.
She's talking smack.
He didn't even do anything.
It's 3 versus 12. Yeah, it's 3 versus 12, isn't it?
Well,
isn't it?
I don't. There may be a power disparity there because Night Chill, she's an elder god.
Yeah, that's true.
So the unfair aspect of this is Krupp probably drove her mad on the way back. And so she's already short-tempered. Had enough, and she's basically just using Night Chill. She's like, Night Chill's in charge. She's pissed off. Don't even talk to me right now. Like, check it out.
That was great, though. I loved it, though. I love that.
All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Amen. Great job. Really enjoyed it.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I remember enjoying the parlay, and I can't wait to see where we get to with this and what goes on here. And especially, I hope that we start to extricate Talk somehow from his hateful prison situation here. It's like, dude, it's eating me alive, man.
Yeah. The description of his body being all twisted, it's really bad. It sounds like he's got pneumonia. Poor guy.
Yeah. He can't even, like, his joints are seized up because they've been broken so many times and healed badly. So it's just like, I'm just a walking, literally I'm stiff-armed, stiff-legged. Everything I walk, if I can even walk, is because it's just, it's like awful. It is awful.
It's real bad. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
And we'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we'd really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.